Hi there, this is Sham here, International SEO Consultant. And today we are going to talk about how to optimize your existing content for AI search, right? So I'll walk you through an example and take you through the steps that you can follow. So the first step is to focus on one query or a broad theme that you want to rank for that particular content. Now, the narrower it is, the better, but you can't optimize one content for multiple queries. When you try to do that, you basically don't rank high enough for any of the queries. So the first objective is to make sure that you find out what query or what topic do you want to rank your content for. So let me walk you through an example, and I'm going to take one of my blogs. Now the blog that you see on the screen is about query fan out. This is a topic under AI search. Now I want query fan out to be my primary keyword, or rather that it's the topic, right? So first I have to find out what can I rank it for. Now there are two ways to do this. One, if we can first check whether we already rank for some keywords or not, and if we don't, then that's a different process. So let's start with that. Now I'm assuming that you have already registered yourself on Google Search Console, which Google Search Console is a free tool that gives you access to data around what our website does on Google search, how much it ranks, how many pages, how many clicks it gets, and all of those kind of things, right? So I'm going to show you mine, and what we are going to do is that we are going to have a filter here. So I'll say add filter page. I'm going to put the query, the URL of my blog, right, which I want to optimize for geo, and I'll say apply. Right now you see that it has got a s- some number of clicks and all, but below that you will see that it gives you the number of queries and what the queries it has been ranking for. So you see here query fan out meaning, query fan out definition, and all of that, and it is sorted by clicks, right? You could sort by impressions as well, doesn't matter, but it has to be in descending order. Now once you do that, whatever is the most relevant and the topmost one, pick that. So in my case, it's the topmost one itself. Sometimes it may not be the case, but you pick out whatever is the most relevant in the order of sequence, right? In this case, it is query fan out. So I'll pick query fan out as my primary keyword. Now this is your primary keyword. You can also have some secondary keywords like query fan out examples. Maybe I'll pick up query fan out technique and some of them, right? I'll use that later on in my content updation. But this is the kind of a preparation phase for this entire optimization process. All right, so now I have my primary keyword. In this example, it is query fan out. If let's say your page doesn't rank for anything, right? Let's say my page is not ranking yet on anything and I want to still optimize it. In that case, what you can do is that you can open Google, right? So I'll open google.com. Let me just share my screen again, and I'll say that okay, let's take a different example, right? Query fan out, I'm already ranking for it, so it doesn't make sense. So let's take sunscreen again. Sunscreen for oily skin, let's say. All right, now what I want you to do is I want you to install one or two Chrome plugins. First one is called Keyword Surfer, right? What you see here, it's a Chrome plugin free of cost. Now what it does is when you search for anything, it tells you the search volume and other queries that is related to your search query. So for example, in this case, sunscreen for oily skin is what I want to target. Let's say my content is around that and I'm trying to kind of find what primary keyword can I target. So it says that, hey, oily skin sunscreen has volume of 6600. It also tells you the country where it is ranking. So let's say you don't want US, you want say India or UK or whatever. You can change the country and it will show you that country's search volume and the different queries that it ranks for, that people search for, right? So sunscreen cream for oily skin is apparently popular. Best sunscreen for men, and so on, right? So you get a different combinations and different variations on what kind of queries are people searching for in India on Google, right? You can use that, and you can also use the volume and decide that, okay, I'm going to target this keyword for my article, right? The existing article that you already have. How to target, we'll get to that, but this is how you choose your primary keyword. I hope this makes sense. There is also one more um, Chrome plugin that you could use, and that is called Ahrefs SEO Toolbar. I have it with me. I'm gonna enable this in my Chrome, and I'm gonna disable Keyword Surfer so that I don't have both of them running parallelly. Otherwise, it clutters the screen. All right. So now I have the other Chrome plugin enabled, and you see here, this is a new Ahrefs SEO toolbar. It also gives me a set of variations what I can use, right? But this has limited options. Like you can't do a lot of things. It does tell you the keyword difficulty for that particular search that you have put on Google, but it doesn't tell you the search volumes for the other ones, right? So you can actually pick whatever fancies you and put it here, and you will get it. If you notice here, you see keyword density, volume, overall search volume, global search volume. This is in US, right? Then traffic potential, clicks, CPC if you're planning to run Google Ads, and so on. You can also have the Ahrefs keyword difficulty free tool, and you can get more details about it. I have covered that in an earlier video, so you can use that as well. Now, once you reach this point, this is the most difficult, or rather the most extensive point, which takes which takes the most time. Now, once you have that, the end point would be that you will have one primary keyword that you want to target for your existing content, and maybe a bunch of other variations of that keyword which you can use in your content in general. And those are called secondary keywords, right? So one primary keyword and three to four secondary keywords. Now, once you have that, what do you do with it? Now, I'm going to tell you a bunch of things that you can do to optimize your content, and all these things will use the primary and secondary keywords that we have finalized, right? Okay. Now, step number one is to edit the meta title and the meta description. Now, meta title and meta description are basically the title that it's the metadata for your content that Google picks up, and it uses that when it shows up, when your content shows up on search results. Now, when you do that, there are different ways of doing it. If you use WordPress as the CMS, it's pretty straightforward. Other CMSs also are pretty straightforward. If you don't know how to do it, ask your web team. They'll of course know how to do it. I'll show you mine, how I do it. My website runs on WordPress, so I'll show you. This is my post query fan out, right? I'll click on quick edit that you see here, and it opens up this kind of metadata form of sorts for the page. Now, what I do is I edit the SEO settings here. You see this SEO description and SEO title. I can edit this and make it better. Now, what do I do in this? Try to include the primary keyword in your meta title and your meta description. Meta title, as it says, it's the title of the page. You can have a different meta title from the actual page title. You can say that this query fan out, use the word itself. So in my case, I use query fan out, the primary keyword, in my title itself, so I don't need to do anything special for the meta title. But in case yours is not like that, then you can kind of include that in the meta title. Same goes with the meta description. So you edit these two. Step number 3, which is after editing the meta title and description, you go and edit the URL slug, what you see here. The URL slug is what you see when you put in your blog URL. The last part is the URL slug, right? That's an editable part. That's what identifies your page, right, in your domain. So include your primary keyword in that URL slug. When you do that, please keep in mind that don't make URL slug too long. Keep it short. Like in my case, I have just mentioned Google query fan out, and that's it, right? So my primary keyword query fan out is there. I have added one more word, Google. I don't have it means for whatever is in the title. So typically what happens is, if you don't do anything, it picks up entire title and uses a dash separator between the words and makes that the URL slug. That's the default for most of the CMSs. Don't do that. Use a shorter slug. It keeps it clean. It also looks better. It also helps bot to understand what your content is about in a better way. So it's a better practice to do, right? So number 3 is to edit the URL slug and make it shorter. When you do that, please make sure that you have a redirection configured from your old URL to the new URL if you're changing the URL, right? Now, otherwise what will happen is your old URL will throw errors. You also need to update your sitemap where you mention all the list of URLs which you want the bot to crawl, and replace the old URL with a new URL, right? So that's step number 3, I think, right? Now, once you're done with this, the next, so you have basically found out your primary keyword, secondary keyword, then you started with updating the meta title, then the URL slug. The next one is to update the alt text of every image with primary or secondary keyword. Now, how do you do that? Let me open up my post again. Now, this time what I'll do is that I'll edit the post so that you can see how it shows up, right? Let me share my screen again. Okay. Now there are multiple ways of doing it. What I'll do here is, this is when I click on edit the post. Again, this is a WordPress example. If you are on a different CMS, or if you have a different way to publish posts or edit the posts, your screen would look different, but the process remains the same. So what I'm saying here is that, see, this is an image, right? I'm talking about AI mode here, and this is a separate image in my blog. So what I'll do is that I will have, if I click on, there are different ways. In my particular case, there is this icon here where I am able to edit the blogs, right? And it will show up images, alt text, alternative text. You see this here. So what I do is I say I describe the image in this text. Now I can also use some of the secondary keywords, or sometimes even the primary keyword in this alt text while describing what the image is about. Remember, the main idea is to describe the image, but to do it in a way where I try to use one of the keywords that are my target keywords. So this is one way. When you edit the post, click on the image and edit the alt text. You can add captions and all of that as well. I also edit the image file name with the primary or secondary keyword before uploading it. That's one additional layer of optimization that you can do. If you can't do all that, just at least edit the alt text, right? So the another way of doing it is to go to the media library. So this is the media library for my entire website. I'll click on one of the, so this was the image that I was talking about, Meet AI mode, right? I can edit it here itself, right? So this becomes the default alt text for this image wherever I use it, right? It's not specific to the post, but it's like whenever I use this image again, it'll pick up the alternative text that I've mentioned here. So you can use either of the methods, but the idea is to edit the alt text. That's the point. Okay, now we have edited meta title, we have edited the URL slug, we have edited the alt text, right? Next is to check if your content is outdated. This is actually very important. See, if your content is outdated, it won't rank. And even if it ranks, it's just a matter of time before it gets deranked, or it drops in your rankings. Now the reason is, nobody wants outdated content, right? You wouldn't want an outdated content when you click on search, right? So the best way to make your content rank higher in AI search, or any search for that matter, is to make sure that your content is up to date. If there is any changes that you need to do, please do it. Otherwise, there is no use of just editing these meta titles and all that. So edit that. If it's a complete revamp, then I will suggest you to go for that instead of just cursory, superficial level changes. Don't try to clickbait people just by saying that, instead of geo tricks, or this is query fan out, right? Query fan out in 2026. If it was a 2025 article, don't just do that. Genuinely make a difference, make your content accurate and up to date, so that people come to your website and stay there. Because if you don't have right content, if you don't have valuable content, people will bounce back. You don't want that, right? So make sure that this happens. So That's the point. So I don't know which number it is, fourth or fifth, but you update your content so that it is up to date. When you do that, try to use your target keywords whenever possible. That's a good idea, especially in your headings, within your content. Try to use primary and secondary keywords that you have identified. It will make it even better. If your content is already up to date, you can also try to just update your content to include those primary and secondary keywords. That also will help. uh, Next, if you obviously should have subheadings, when you have that, follow a heading hierarchy. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's go back to our example, the blog that I was talking about, right? Let's take that again. This is my blog, correct? Now you see here, there are like which queries need a query fan out. Then there are query fan out example. All these are like headers, right? And if you notice, these are H1, H2s and all that. So let me actually open, let me click, see, here you can see this is H3, right? Query fan out example. This is H2, I think. See, this is H2. And if you go to the main title, it will be H1, right? So the idea is that you should have only one H1, and then the rest of them should be H2, H3, depending on what you're talking about and where the subheading is. So the hierarchy has to be followed. Now, while you do that, you should also remember to include your target keywords. So if you see here, ours was query fan out in this example. So query fan out is there mentioned here, query fan out examples. So it is already optimized for all of these things. And then implication, so it's not necessary that you have to include it in every single heading. So for instance, in this case, I'm not including it because it becomes too much of a keyword stuffing of sorts, right? It has to read naturally. So that's the intent. Then you can also include videos and all of those kind of things. But that's the point, like, ensure that your heading hierarchy is maintained, right? Now, once you have done this, you have completed about 6 steps, right? The last step is probably one of the most important for GEO, although all the others that I mentioned also help. And the last one is that include schema in your content. Now, what do I mean by that? Schema, as you might know, it is like a metadata for your articles. I'll show you an example with WordPress, but it's the same for any article, any post. The process might be different, but what you do is still the same. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to open one of the edit posts for my query fan out page. All right, this is the page, right? Now, there I have already installed some schemas here. So if I go, it depends on what plugin you are using. I'm using something called as rank math. There are many other, you can use any of them, schema plugins. And you can see that here I use article schema and video schema. Why? Because this itself is an article, the blog, right? That falls under article schema. And then I have embedded videos here, right? So if you notice, I have like configured it to be the title should be the article heading. The article description should be the SEO description that I wrote in the quick edit, right? I also say that, hey, the person author is a person, name is name. This is automatically picked up, and it shows up as Shyam Govind, right? So all of these things have been date published, date modified, and so on, right? So all of these are mentioned in the article schema. When you do this, what happens is it's very easy for the bot to understand what your article is about, the metadata about your article, and so on, right? So you need to kind of include all of those things. Now, once you do all of this, your existing content will definitely do manifolds better than what it was doing earlier in AI search. I hope this helps, and I'll see you in the next one.